Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Cultivate. This is our podcast of the Evergreen Association, and I'm totally excited to have my good friend, Pastor Angeline Lau, here with us today. She is the senior minister of Japanese Baptist Church. We go way back, and so I'd love to hear and talk a bit about that if we can. I used to be the senior minister at JBC, but we've known each other even before then. We did ministry when we were both living in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And we're good friends, and it's always fun to have friends on the show.
Yeah.
So before we jump into it, I've known you for what, is it? Maybe almost 10 plus years?
Yeah.
But the folks might not know you who are watching or listening online. So I thought it might be nice for us to just get caught up. If you could briefly tell us about your path to ministry, and then we'll dive into it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be able to talk like this and with our greater Evergreen family. But let's see. I would say my path to ministry was slow and gradual. And I think God knew exactly how I need to come into ministry and come into that understanding and accept that call. So since I was young, was part of lay ministry in everything, in every aspect. I would help out at church. So when I went off to college, I felt like my call was into teaching because I'd been a Sunday school teacher and different things. After completing that degree, I taught for a couple years and it was good and I enjoyed it. And I continued to do lay ministry. But it wasn't until there was a couple moments where God was just like, "Be prepared. Things are coming." And in the course of a year, the school that I had worked at closed, and then there was a position that was open at my church for ministry, and so I stepped into it thinking part-time. I'll do this. I'll support the church for a few years and move on. And that few years turned into 8 years, and into the ministry and a calling for just started off with children and then to students and families and now for just the greater church in general. And even my call over to JBC was, again, God just not telling me the whole picture, but just like, here, take this step.
Yeah.
And then I got the call from you, from like, hey, you interested?
Right.
Are you open to this position? And I was like,
Right.
I don't know.
And that position was just as an administrator at the start.
Yep. And that was humbling because I was like, I've done ministry for years. Why am I taking this essentially like a secretarial role? I was like, oh, Lord, help me.
Yeah.
This is humbling because I don't know if I want that.
Yeah.
But it was an opportunity where I knew God was saying, I want you to see more of my family. I want you to see and experience more churches, more bodies of believers.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay. And I also, we had been friends and I was like, I trust your leadership. So I was like, I'm more than happy to help launch whatever you want ministry God has for you here. Right. And little did we know, right, that launch was a launch into, yes, your ministry here for a season, but then also into my continuing ministry here at JBC.
Right. And I was very uncomfortable bringing you on because I wanted you on board because we work together so well.
Yeah.
And I just knew if I can work with Angeline, it's going to help me a lot. But the only position we have is administrator. So I worked really hard. We got you to be associate minister, I think a year after. I was pushing very hard to get that done right away. And even though you're associate minister, I very much consider you my co-pastor. Like in terms of your voice, your input, all that you did was extremely valuable for me. And I learned a lot from our work together. So I was super excited to recommend you to be the senior minister. Of course, it's not my opinion that makes these things happen, but it just was so obvious to me that you would be the best choice. And so I'm so glad to see you doing that. You've been ministering here now for 2 years, right?
Coming on 3.
Coming on 3. Yeah, that's right. Wow. Right, because so when you joined that's when I joined Evergreen.
Yep.
So I'm coming on 3 for Evergreen.
Time flies.
Time totally flies. That's amazing. And it's interesting when we're talking about this. I liked how you described your journey because we sometimes hear in ministry this narrative of like, oh yeah, God just called me or knocked me off the horse on the road to Emmaus, and I became a pastor, or I did this. And I feel like those are very rare. And in fact, I'd almost say they're a little dangerous because they're not tested through time and not really like listening to your journey. And the way you described it was so great because you were listening to like, oh, these are things I like and I want to explore. And even though you're senior minister now, like it doesn't mean that this is the end of the journey. It can keep evolving, right? And so I think it's actually a great model for ministry and calling. I sometimes wish people would take more time to listen to their whole life journey than just like some, I don't know, extreme emotional, spiritual experience, you know, to take over things. So I'm going to switch things up just a little bit. I feel like as we're talking about calling and such, this might be a nice place to shift slightly to talk about your role as an Asian American pastor, as also female clergy. And I'm sure that was a lot of like the challenging and like the calculating through all of this. How did you kind of deal with all that and process that?
Oof.
Yeah, I know it's big. It's big.
Yeah. So going into ministry, that was not something I'd ever considered. If anything, I grew up just loving God, loving the church, and would have been like the happiest being the best lay leader anybody could ask for. Loved being part of people's lives and doing all these different things. And so it wasn't until I had stepped into the full-time position at my church that a few years in, my senior pastor was like, you're essentially doing the job and the ministry of a pastor. You're leading, you're guiding, you're doing these different things, you're teaching. What's holding you back? And I had to come to terms with, I was like, what is holding me back? I, again, never considered ministry or pastoral ministry as an occupation because growing up in Western society, there was a picture of what they looked like, what they sounded like, their type of personality. And when I looked around, when I saw the books that people were writing within the Christian spaces and the leaders and the people who were speakers, I'm not that. I don't act like that. I don't sound like that. And so wasn't a huge consideration, but thanks to a lot of people who had spoken into my life, yourself, senior pastor, just other ministry folks, and even just also friends and family who were essentially like helping me to discern the process, where I got to the point where it's like, I would love to keep doing this. I was teaching and like building into people's lives and educating young people, but it wasn't until I had stepped in and when I was in this position that I was like, oh, this is it. Like, yes, I can build into people academically and help them become people that are, functioning in society. But here I get to pour into people and build people up that they would know their creator, that they would be spiritually connected to themselves, to God, to each other. And I'm like, this is so much better. So all those things play together.
Yeah. I love so many things you're talking about right now. I'm sure, I wonder if you had a similar experience like myself when I was growing up. We'd go to these conferences or like there'd be a real popular worship band and you just look around and no one looks like us, right? I mean, just being Asian and their particular kind of spirituality, while impressive, I almost felt this pressure like I need to conform to that, even though it doesn't speak to me. And I can't help but feel like what you're talking about too, how much more so being, a female Asian American, that feeling like you said so well about, that's not me, where do I find it? And like, I feel like our generation almost has to be like, well, we don't have those models, so I guess we got to be the model maybe for generations after us. And I definitely see that in you. I'm so excited you're doing ministry. Definitely when I was working together with you, I was always feeling that God had a great calling in your life. So it's very exciting for me to see all the wonderful things that you're doing, not just at JBC, but you're also a part of the Asian Alliance.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, do you mind telling people a bit about what the Asian Alliance is?
Yeah, the Alliance of Asian American Baptist Churches is essentially the renamed just Asian Caucus, because we have all the different groups represented, and having a space to gather together and be able to advocate and represent our voice within the larger body, but also to support the ministries and the churches that oftentimes, especially within the ethnic churches, tend to seem to stay on the edges because they don't engage. They don't, not that they don't engage, things don't really connect well with them, or there's a language barrier, or just different functional things. And so with the Alliance, we essentially do our best to equip and empower our Asian churches and Asian leaders, seminarians, and we go after different grants, try to bring people together. Currently, we have a couple grants going, some for Burma advocacy, some for just empowering our young adults. And so get a lot of great opportunities within the Alliance.
Yeah, and this is a nationwide organization. So we're talking about the entire American Baptist denomination, not just Evergreen.
Yeah.
Evergreen does have our own Asian caucus.
Yes.
But we're talking on a much larger scale.
Yeah.
Which is really exciting.
Yeah.
So that's a lot, I guess, to process. If you could maybe think of, I'm starting to see there's a new generation of younger Asian American female clergy, and especially from Southeast Asia, which is really exciting. I feel like our generation, a lot of the ministry was around East Asian ministry.
Yeah.
But I think with immigration patterns, how things are working out, that's not where the movement is happening as much. When you think of our new friends coming up into ministry, what are some thoughts or ideas you might want to impart to them? Or, anything that you've thought of that maybe they should consider going forward?
There is a couple things. First off, stay so close to God and make sure to surround yourself with diverse communities that help you, especially when I was having to navigate those different spaces where it ended up being very male or very male dominant or very white or whatever it was. Being within diverse communities reminds me that it's okay to be me. Yeah. It's okay to be a little bit different. It's okay not to be the loudest. It's okay to take a few minutes to think before you jump and you do something. Big thing, pace yourself. I wish I had told myself that in the beginning. I was so thankful for all the opportunities to do ministry in the beginning, but I was like, a blink of an eye, I'm like, I completely lost myself. I lost myself within church, within the ministry. And I remember having a conversation with a friend, and she was just like, but what is calling you? What is God calling you? Yeah. Because you bring something really unique and different. Yeah. And I think that's something really important for each of our, any women, Asian women who are going into ministry. Because first off, it's double layered, right? First off, for women, that, there's expectations, there's a certain type of hospitality that is expected that sometimes doesn't get expected of male pastors. Right. And then you throw on top of that the Asian American or Asian identity, where it can tend to be a little patriarchal. And then, again, another layer of that expectation to be hospitable, be kind, be quiet.
Shrink.
Yes. Because you're also thinking about the collective. It's not just me. It's not just what I think. It's like, well, let's take into account what everyone's thinking and let's move forward with that. And so, just naturally how we're brought up, you have to layer all those things together. Yes. It's a strength, but also a weakness. You just got to, with all of our strengths, there is a possibility of that being a detriment. So if you're not careful. So I think yes, definitely pace yourself, stay in community, stay with diverse communities, making sure that you're remembering who you are, because your voice is very specific and unique and necessary.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah.
I feel like you and I also share the background is that we're both second generation children of immigrants. So our parents are immigrants, and we came here starting a new life in the country that was not our parents. And I feel like that complex navigating you're talking about is what we have to do all the time. And then that added layer, it's not just in our own personal lives, but in ministry. It's a very complex matrix, in that I feel like some of our friends who are not in our, who don't share like our family history, like they don't realize like how complicated Asian American ministry can be, right? And this is very apt for us, talking about just awareness for Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, Hawaiians, is that our ministry is very complicated when we do ministry in America. And even to say what is Asian is crazy, because like there's so much involved in it.
Yes.
It's almost unfair to have it all grouped as a people group. But this is a great moment to shift, because what you said, I wish what you said was spoken to me when I got here. I guess you're learning too, because we have both pastored at Japanese Baptist Church, this wonderful church with 126 years of history, but it is so important to the Japanese American community, what it represents.
Yeah.
Right? So there's this whole layer to it. It's not just one generation, but like 4 or 5 generations. And because although it's small in some ways, its footprint is very large. And when you're talking, I was just thinking about, this is a small church, but we are called upon to represent, to step up, to be the voice, not just locally, but nationally.
Yeah.
Sometimes internationally. And everything you're talking about, like, it's very easy to get swept up in it, and then to let it take over your life. And then you don't think about what has God called me to? Because you feel like I have to honor this weight that's put upon me. What are some of the ways that you've kind of been balancing that reality is that, look, I'm a local church pastor, but this isn't just any church. So what are some of the, I think you've already touched at some of it, but what are some of the ways that you've kind of navigated through all of that?
So when you had submitted my name and asked the church to consider me when you're gonna prepare to move on, I'm sure you remember this conversation. I was shocked, because I was like, I don't think I can do this. Not just, if it was just any old church, I know how to love people. I know how to like do that part. It's like, oh no, JBC's identity is so much more.
Right.
And so like essentially, like biggest things that I had to consider were like the history, right? The roots, the DNA of this church. And I think just like any other historic church or church that's been around for a while, there's things that they want to hold on to, things that they're known for and whatever else. But like you said, there's that other layer of being Japanese within the part of the Japanese community and being such a big, significant part of it. And yes, having to speak out and hold space and different things. And so I think 2 elements come to mind, and specifically like there's great expectations, but then great opportunities at the same time.
Right.
So the expectation to within, I mean, like you mentioned, you're not Japanese, I'm not Japanese, we're Asian. And even when I came on staff, I was like, I served at an Asian American church, coming to JBC, another Asian American church, I'll be fine. And the nuances that we had to work through, right? I was and I'm still trying to work through, is something to navigate. So because there's different expectations. There's so many unspoken things.
So many.
That I'm sorry if that's triggering you. Just breathe through it. There's so many unspoken things that we try to navigate, and then also to think about, now how do we still be a church?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I know you want to, with the long history, we got to hold that.
Yeah.
Because but that walks in the opportunities because, for better or for worse, our parents are the way they are, our grandparents were the way they are. And so unspoken things, stories not shared, we end up being like a caretaker for people to reconnect with their roots, reconnect with their ancestors, reconnect with a story that God has been writing for such a long time that maybe some people have just been disconnected from.
Yeah.
So like this past month, even though we didn't really plan it to be any big anniversary celebration, we had a 50-year reunion for some of the youth and young adults and college folks who came back.
Right.
And for some of them, it was such a rich time to be reminded of what God was able to do. And a lot of them came up to me, like the leaders would be like, we didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah.
But what they did,
Yeah.
they now see hindsight, like God blessed it.
Yeah.
And just a reminder of how faithful God is, how he like steadfast and loving and kind. And so no matter, even if they've been away for, at this point, decades, away from their faith, away from JBC, coming together, they shared in vulnerability and in openness and trusting like those seeds that were planted so long ago, though it looked like it was dried up, like the living water of God, right? You're like, oh, look at that. Look at the breath go in.
Yeah.
And so, so we get these great opportunities where, we'll get like nieces and granddaughters and whoever else will come in from different states because they're like, oh, my parents or my somebody went to JBC. Do you think I can check your records? And for them to spend hours just going through. And yes, it's nice to be like a space that holds some things that might be a treasure to them. But our prayer is more on the end of like, and would you also see God? Would you also see God writing this story and how you're welcomed into this story? You are part of this story, whether or not you realize it.
Yeah. Wow. That's so good. Oh, I love everything you said. This is a real blessing actually listening to you talk about this. Like when you said something that I love was that you're like a caretaker of the stories. And I wonder, and you kind of tied it to the fact that you are a child of immigrants. And I was just thinking about it too, is like, we do have that burden of like thinking of like, how do we take care of these precious stories and how do we kind of connect it? We're like that, I don't know, the interconnective, like interstitial tissue of generations. And when you said it in that context, I was thinking like, isn't that the work of all pastors, right? Because, I've pastored in Korean churches, Chinese American, Japanese, now doing Evergreen. I realized we have to get away from this thinking like you're talking about. When I remember I first went into a Chinese church for the first time, I was a little nervous because, well, I guess we're all Asian, how bad could it be? But I had to learn,
silly.
I had to, so silly. I had to deprogram so much and learn and let them speak on their own terms. And then I did it again with JBC, doing it again, working with Evergreen. And it's kind of a reminder is that this isn't just a work for us, this is the work for all pastors, is that we're all caretakers of stories. And we have to really value and treasure their stories and learn from them and learn how to like properly hold them in the light of God. And I think you said that so beautifully. And I was really actually moved in that just when you were sharing about it. I was like, oh, I think this is going to be the first podcast I cry on. Great. Okay. Angeline wins. It's, so much good wisdom. And I know when we came on, you were always kind of regarding me as like your senior, but just as you were sharing today, I was thinking like, I'm learning so much from you. Like I was just thinking when I was preparing these questions, I talked about what's the challenges of being in a church like, JBC, and you just turned it around. You said, well, it's actually opportunities. And when you said that, I was like, you're totally right. Why did I say it like that? I have things to learn. So I am very grateful for you. I'm learning so much from you. I'm very happy for your ministry. The National Asian Alliance is so fortunate to have you working with them. So thank you again for your time and for allowing us to shoot this on location in the Memorial Chapel at Japanese Baptist Church. It's been a real pleasure. Please like and subscribe. Tell people about it. This show tells you about Evergreen and just the amazing stories within. A lot of great conversations, a lot of great resources. We'd love to see you again next time. So talk to you then. Bye.